welcome to another edition of Windsor Teaches Ancient History. In this episode, we're going to be discussing Xerxes I, the fourth Achaemenid king on the OCR Ancient History specification and his interactions with other peoples. You're actually joining me in part 4 of a 4-part series, so if you're joining me right now at the beginning of part 4, please check out the other 3 episodes and then come back. Xerxes' relationship with other peoples can only really be characterized in the scope of the way he interacted with the Greeks, both in the islands and mainland Greece as well. However, you can't really classify the Greeks as ever really having been conquered by the Persians, but you can chart Xerxes' interaction with them and the sort of things that tells us about his character. In the last episode, we found out that Darius died in around 486 BC while messing around with the Cycladic Greek islands and a bit of mainland Greece as well in the form of Athens and Eretria. And he died in 486 when there was a rebellion in Egypt and was not able to finish the work that he was doing in Greece. However, the stage is now set for Xerxes to continue his father's work in not only the islands of Greece, but the mainland of Greece as well. Now, Xerxes resorts to trickery in order to get on the throne. He's not actually Darius's oldest son. What he does is he uses the so-called Spartan system of whoever is the first son born after the previous king becoming king is the new king. And so he's actually edged out his older brother to become the new Persian king. When he comes to the throne, there are a couple of rebellions going on. One of them is in Egypt and the other is in Babylon. Again, as we learned from Darius, we could really interpret this in one of 2 ways. One, that these places were just opportunistic. And there is certainly a pattern that when a monarch dies, certain conquered territories will have a revolt or rebellion in the wake of that death. Or you could take it as a statement against Xerxes himself, his personality and his style as king. Perhaps these areas did not want to be under the yoke of Xerxes I, and therefore points to him perhaps having a negative relationship with these places. It is also said that places like Egypt, for instance, became a little bit upset and fed up with having their taxes hiked up over time in order to pay for fleets to invade mainland Greece that were ultimately unsuccessful under Darius. So we know already that Darius has made considerable inroads into conquering Cycladic Greek islands as well as mainland Greece as well. And the stage is very much set for Xerxes and his campaign into Greece as well, which is something he's going to capitalize upon during his reign. There are a couple of reasons for and against the invasion of Greece. For instance, the idea of revenge very much set in the Persian mindset around this time, in particular Athens and Eretria for their role in the Ionian revolt and the subsequent burning of Sardis by Greek soldiers. Also, there's the fact that Xerxes, like previous kings, has to live up to his ancestors and his predecessors, in particular the blueprint of Cyrus the Great in the expansion of territory. You can be as good as king as you want, but if there is expansion of territory missing from that formula, you cannot count yourself as a successful Persian king. Furthermore, there's also the expansion of territory required in order to satisfy the lust and hunger for territory of the growing superpower, the Persian Empire. There are some reasons why Xerxes might have second thoughts about invading Greece as well. For instance, the memory of the defeat of the Persian army at Marathon is still very firmly stuck in Persian minds, and this is something that may have dissuaded them at first from invading Greece, but also could count as a motivating factor for invading Greece for that additional sense of revenge. There is also very firmly in the Persian mindset the defeat of Darius and the Scythian expeditions. So far under Darius, the last few engagements have ended badly, and so Xerxes at this point might be trying to turn around the Persian luck. So of course, before too long, and the stage set by Darius I, Xerxes begins his Greek campaign. There is a considerable degree of preparation involved in this. And also, Xerxes shows considerable skill as a commander. It takes about 4 years to prepare, and it draws soldiers from all over the Persian Empire. Herodotus numbers Xerxes' army at something like 2.6 million soldiers, all drawn from 47 different nations. Not only this, but Xerxes orchestrates 2 pontoon bridges to be built across the Hellespont, which is the narrow strip of water separating Asia from Europe. Not only this, but Xerxes also cuts a canal through Greece so that ships can avoid the choppy waters going around this part of Thessaloniki. Not only this, but he also sets up a supply line through Macedonia and Thrace as well. With the stage set by his predecessor and father Darius I, Xerxes starts his Greek campaign, which takes 4 years of preparation, and Xerxes shows considerable skill as a commander in this time. He draws soldiers from all over the Persian Empire, and Herodotus numbers Xerxes' army at 2.6 million people, all drawn from 47 different nations. You have to wonder about Xerxes' relationship with the people under the empire at this point. He's able to draw such a huge number of people from such a large, diverse set of nations, then we must lead to the conclusion that his relationship with those peoples was essentially good. However, this number might be an over-exaggeration by Herodotus in order for the resistant Greeks to seem more heroic in their eventual defeat of Xerxes' invasion. Xerxes also builds 2 pontoon bridges across the Hellespont, which is a narrow strip of water that separates Asia from Europe. He also cuts a canal through Greece so that ships can avoid choppy waters. Not only this, but Xerxes sets up supply lines through Thrace, which is modern-day Bulgaria, and Macedonia in order to keep his vast and expansive Persian army supplied on their conquest. So again, you have to wonder about Xerxes' relationship with the people underneath the empire at this point. He's managed to mobilize a huge number of people under the empire, all of whom are from distinct different cultures, speak different languages. And you've got to wonder how that might be. Maybe Xerxes has created this fictional boogeyman in the form of Greece and allowed all of the people through propaganda to become united under one banner in the face of a common enemy. However, you could interpret this differently. Either there was a shared enemy of Greece amongst all of the peoples of the Persian Empire, and they willingly joined Xerxes as their leader. However, you could, if you're a cynic, interpret this as an act of fear of Xerxes. Perhaps they felt as if they had to join Xerxes in his army, because if they resisted, they may have been treated very, very poorly and potentially executed under his totalitarian power. Xerxes' forward-thinking military planning results in him marching down mainland Greece towards Thermopylae, or the Hot Gates, which of course are highly mythologized in the form of the graphic novel and subsequent film 300, with Gerard Butler as Captain Leonidas, who leads not only the 300 Spartans, but a force of around 7,000 allied Greek soldiers as well. Eventually, they are sold out by a traitor by the name of Ephialtes, and the Persians are able to outflank the Spartans and the allied Greek soldiers. After which, they go down to Athens and burn Athens as punishment and revenge for their part that they played in the Ionian Revolt. Something that Alexander is going to seek revenge for something like 150 years later at the burning of the city of Persepolis once it has been conquered underneath his Asian campaign. Of course, Xerxes is said to have been so enraged by Leonidas and the Spartans and the allied Greeks' resistance of his army that once the battle was over, he finds Leonidas' corpse and decapitates his body. From there, the Persians move towards Athens and they destroy it. Athens, thankfully, had been evacuated and its fighting men drawn to Salamis, where a naval battle ensued. In the narrow straits of Salamis, the superior Persian number of ships counted for nothing, since the currents turned the Persian ships sideways, and that superior number actually worked against them in the end. Eventually, the Persian fleet was defeated by an Athenian commander by the name of Themistocles. Xerxes apparently witnessed the humiliating defeat at Salamis as he was sitting on a throne situated high above on the top of a cliff. Eventually, Xerxes retreats back to Persia, leaving one of his commanders, Mardonius, to complete the conquest of Greece. But Mardonius himself is defeated at the Battle of Plataea, and also the Persian navy is defeated at the Battle of Mycale. See already how Xerxes is not necessarily able to turn around the Persians' losing streak that started with Darius' Scythian expedition and finishing with Salamis. There is, however, one more battle in 466 BC. You can consider it a last-ditch attempt to conquer Greece under Xerxes' regime. According to Plutarch, Xerxes has been so humiliated by the defeat at Eurymedon, which was the final battle, that he entered into a peace treaty with Greece and thus stopped any further excursions into the Greek peninsula or the Cycladian islands. After the final defeat of the Persian army at Eurymedon in 466 BC, Xerxes is finally assassinated in 465 BC by Artabanus, a member of the royal bodyguard. There are a couple of conflicting stories about Xerxes' death. Titius, who is a Persian, indicates that Artabanus accuses Xerxes' son, Darius, of the murder, and he in turn is killed by Xerxes' eldest son, called Artaxerxes. However, Aristotle tells us that Artabanus kills Darius and then Xerxes, but then Artaxerxes, Xerxes' oldest son, kills Artabanus and his sons for fear of any sort of reprisals. So in this way, we get a little bit of a sense of how Xerxes interacted with, first of all, people under his empire and his additional reach into Greece to add the Greeks to the subjects of his empire as well, although he is not particularly successful. We see that he's not necessarily able to turn around the losing streak of Darius I, his father and predecessor. Thank you for tuning in for this episode of Windsor Teaches Ancient History. Who do you think is the king with the highest and lowest amount of tact and skill when interacting with other people, not just people under the empire, but other people outside of the empire as well? Leave a comment below the video for a discussion. Thank you very much.